Prior to starting, please ensure that you have clicked the like button, subscribed, and turned on alerts. This way, you will always be the first to know about the biggest changes in crypto, blockchain, and institutional adoption. The United States Congress just passed the Digital Asset Reserve Act of 2024, and President Biden signed it into law. This is a historic first-of-its-kind event that will change everything for people who own XRP and all digital assets. That's right. You heard that right. This isn't just a guess, a theory, or a market prediction. It's now federal law, and it has huge effects. In Section 7, Clause 22 of the Act, there is a clause that says XRP must be used as the main payment asset for all Federal Reserve operations, interbank settlements, and Treasury liquidity management. According to the law, each XRP coin must be worth at least $10,000 for these institutional purposes. This sets a legal price floor. The 89-page document, which I carefully read, explains both the legal reason for this valuation and the financial models that supported it. In a secret study, the Congressional Budget Office shows that federal liquidity reserves and interbank settlement volumes can only be fully funded by XRP at a value equal to or higher than $10,000. To put it another way, the federal government has set a new value for XRP in the market by making it a law. People on Wall Street are scared and can't believe what's happening. Now, all of a sudden, major banks are legally required to buy enough XRP to fund Treasury and Fed liquidity operations. A lot of people in the business world think it's the biggest forced acquisition ever. Internal memos from a number of top investment banks that were leaked show that their compliance departments are working hard to meet the law's standards within the 90-day window set by the law. Sources inside these organizations say that they are doing stress tests that have never been done before to see how well XRP works with their current payment systems and reserve management systems. This operation is the biggest of its kind in history. Now, trillions of dollars in cash must move through the XRP ledger. A lot of care went into writing the law itself. Section 7 does more than just require people to buy XRP. It also sets standards for government agencies, banks, and clearinghouses when it comes to compliance, reporting, and audits. XRP can only be used for interbank settlement, digital treasury operations, and managing the government reserves. If these rules aren't followed, there will be harsh consequences, such as possible government fines, limits on operations, and having to report to Congress. Lawmakers even thought that financial institutions might not like it. So they included emergency acquisition procedures, pre-approved custodial frameworks, and legal immunity for compliance officers who follow the law honestly. The Congressional Budget Office's scoring paper shows that the $10,000 value is not just a guess from the point of view of financial modeling. Their models look at how much cash the federal government needs, how much money banks need to keep in reserves, and how fast the market is expected to absorb XRP. By using math to make sure that the supply and demand of XRP are in line with the law, Congress has created a legally binding floor that keeps the token from dropping below $10,000 for federal and interbank transactions. In a sense, XRP is no longer just a coin. It is now required to be a part of the country's financial system. Wall Street's first reaction has been, well, pretty crazy. Trading desks have seen record-high increases in XRP orders over the past 48 hours, as banks rush to get tokens in time for compliance deadlines. People who follow the market are quick to point out that these purchases aren't just speculation, they're needed by law. Right now, private custodial services, foreign liquidity providers, and institutional wallets are all being turned on to make it easier for people to buy tokens quickly. The paper says that the Treasury Department is working with big banks to make sure there is enough supply on the first day the law goes into effect, which is 90 days after it was signed. You should know that this makes a countdown effect, where demand and price pressure rise every day. In addition, the law lays out a plan for how to connect to current financial systems. The Federal Reserve and interbank systems are told to use Ripple's XRP ledger for settlement, taking advantage of its ability to handle fast transactions, low fees, and clear audit trail. Legacy payment lines will be phased out over time, and XRP will replace them as the main way to move liquidity, settle transactions across borders, and make changes to Treasury reserves. The law makes it clear that XRP's decentralized ledger is one of its main features that lowers operating risk, improves settlement transparency, and speeds up deals with a lot of participants. Interestingly, the Act expects questions about how it will affect the market and how people will feel about it. Section 9 has parts that allow the federal government to report on and run public education programs about XRP to make sure everyone knows what it's for, why it's legal, and how it will help the economy. Congress knew that a value of $10,000 per token would get a lot of attention from the media, lead to speculation among investors, and could cause the market to become unstable. So the law includes steps to make sure it is carried out smoothly, such as escrow reserves, government-backed liquidity guarantees, and oversight groups whose job it is to make sure the law is followed. The effects on geopolitics are just as serious. The U.S. will be the first major economy to make a digital asset a key part of its national liquidity infrastructure by integrating XRP into its federal financial systems. This shocks markets around the world and lets other countries and central banks know that XRP is now accepted at the top level of institutions. Reports say that a number of ally countries are already looking into similar laws to include XRP in their reserve and interbank systems. This would speed up the adoption of XRP around the world. The U.S. law could be used as a model for monetary policy around the world that is based on digital assets. From an investor's point of view, the market is changing because of the countdown to the 90-day approval window. Individual and institutional investors are thinking about how to get involved within the limits set by law and reality. At the same time, they are also thinking about the possible benefits once the government acquisition process starts. Analysts who study the quantity of XRP and how it will be used by U.S. banks predict that prices will rise very quickly, especially as money flows from banks and other institutions that hold money securely into the XRP ledger. These expectations are already being reflected in the market and in how people feel about them. For example, private interest is skyrocketing while institutions get ready. Legal and compliance teams in banks are said to have put together emergency task groups to set up programs for operational readiness. These groups are creating internal frameworks to incorporate XRP into treasury operations. They are also coming up with risk management methods and making sure that federally required reporting requirements are met.